Hey, welcome back. I'm Chris, and today we're going to talk about a couple different ways to get proper exposure. Let's do this real quick. Now I'm going to go old school, and we're going to talk about the 18% gray card. It's one of the fastest and easiest and cheapest ways to get proper exposure. Now all you have to do is take your camera and turn it to spot metering. Hold up your 18% gray card and spot meter right on your gray card here, and it's going to give you your proper exposure for skin tones. Now this is in relation to Ansel Adams exposure system. 18% gray is pretty much right in the middle. It's good for skin tones and accurately reproducing them. Now if you're doing landscapes and stuff like that, you might want to adjust your exposure accordingly to what your actual subject is. But we're just going to talk about this in 18% gray and how to get that, more so under studio conditions, YouTube videos, portraits and stuff like that. It's all related. You can also, if you have a light meter, do the same thing. You want to go ahead and dial in your shutter speed, or in my case, as close as I can get to it. Depending on what ISO I like to use, I would punch that in, hit the button, and then depending on how you want to change things, it'll change the values for you. And that's pretty much all the exposure triangle, and we'll go over the exposure triangle more in depth in another video. And you're pretty much doing the same thing with your camera when you're using your 18% gray card. I've already got my shutter speed dialed in because I'm doing video, so it's 1/50th. I select what aperture I want to use, so I have the perfect depth of field that I want. And then when you meter with your spot meter on your camera, it's going to give you the ISO that you should be using. Basically for video, we're adjusting the ISO for the most part, and then we're adjusting the aperture. Shutter speed's pretty much remaining the same. Photos, it's completely different. You can adjust the shutter speed however you like. If you're hand holding it, stick with like 1/25th. Me, I'm a little shaky, so I might even go 1/60th. It all depends. Now you can use something like this, which is an old school light meter. You just go ahead and dial in your ISO. And then you take your light reading. And then you dial in the light reading value. You look for your shutter speed, and it's going to give you the aperture. And you can see, depending upon the light value, your shutter speed and aperture are going to move a little bit. But it's kind of cool to have something like this and go old school. So regardless of what you use, you want to make sure you're properly exposing for your subject. In my case right now, my subject is me, so I made sure that I was properly exposed with the 18% gray card to what I like. And I like my exposure to be just a little bit darker than the values that this gray card gives me, but that's just me and my preference and what I like, what my eye sees. So let's do something a little bit different here. Let's put my camera on auto, or at least the most auto that I can get for video, and see what the exposure looks like. So this is the most automatic I'm going to get my camera in relation to keeping the shutter speed at 1/50th of a second. My aperture is at f4, and the ISO is probably going anywhere from 320 to 500, anywhere in that range, depending on what it's metering and such. So I'm kind of, it's probably a little bit more, it's more bright. I'm sure it's brighter than what I normally like, but just the same, this is what, well, automatic would do for you. And I like more control. That's why I like using these cameras, because I'm gonna get the most control out of it. So this is as close as I'm gonna get to what this meter says, just because this doesn't go to 1/50th of a second for some reason. Like I said, this thing's 18 years old. I would literally have to pull out my old camera that I used to use, and yeah, there's no 1/50th on here, just 1/60th and 1/25th. Oh man, look at the size difference between these things. Oh boy. Alright, I'm getting off tangent here. Let's put this back. So my point is, get your proper exposure for 18% gray, and then you can, deviate from that a little bit, depending if you want something a little bit more overexposed or a little bit more underexposed, depending on the mood of what your photograph or video is going to be. But start with a nice base. That's kind of the whole point of the videos I'm doing, is just to have a nice base of knowledge and then to build upon that. Now, one bad habit I have, and what I don't like to do, is to rely on the LCD screen of your camera to accurately judge the proper exposure of the scene, for a couple reasons. Your LCD screen, the brightness might be turned up too much, it might be turned down too much. It might be outdoors where you're getting glare. You could be indoors where you're getting glare. It's just not a great accurate representation of the exposure that you're actually getting. It's a nice little guide, but I would like to get the proper exposure either through the metering system some other way to effectively do exposure. Now I know there's more accurate ways to get proper exposure out there, to get really detailed with it, but I just want to go over some of the basic ways, and something like this could be pretty affordable if you get an old school light meter, like something like this. If you buy something used, it might be good, but this, under $10, if not a couple of bucks, you could very easily get the proper exposure and get proper white balance for your videos, your photos, and everything else. I think I've done enough rambling for today, so I'll see you on the next one. Wait, if you're new, well, I thank you for watching and joining us today, and, well, you know what, if any of this helped you, please leave me a comment below and how it helped you, and if you want more clarification on something, let me know as well. And you know what, if you consider subscribing, I definitely thank you for it. It helps my channel out and, well, allows me to provide more content like this, provided that I know people actually like it. You know what I mean. So anyways, I'm doing more rambling again, and I'll see you on the next one.